by a guest who's been here in studio before, Mike Stenhouse with the Rhode Island Center for Freedom and Prosperity.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Appreciate your being back in studio. It's a new year. It's a new General Assembly session. It's a new budget. Budget is coming out tomorrow, but we did hear last night from Governor Raimondo her State of the State. The center released a statement earlier today. Wanted to invite Mike in to let me know what you thought of what the governor said last night.
All right, so I'm going to test you as a fellow Harvard alum and you as viewers. It was a true example of a paralipsis.
A paralipsis? Oh gosh.
Where you cherry pick one good item, mention it, and ignore all the other stuff that might be of more concern around it. That's what happened.
So what did the cherry-picked item, there's a lot of reaction that we've heard, but what did you think that the focus was on at the expense of everything else?
The focus is on this move from last place to 28th place in a poll, basically a poll. You know, but our center looks at a lot of broader indexes where we're still in the bottom 10 and have been in the bottom 10. We look at the bottom 10 in business climate. We look at the bottom 10 in family prosperity index. We look at the bottom 10 in our own jobs and opportunity index. We're in the bottom 10 as far as the amount of regulatory burdens that businesses have to face in this state.
So would you call those top rankings fake news?
Well, it's cherry picked.
depends,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's cherry picked, and that was the focus. So I like the upbeat nature of it. It's the governor has to be upbeat, but she also has to live in the real world. Because we're not going to solve problems if we don't understand the problems, if we don't confront the problems and address them, and the problem to us is that people are leaving our state. While our population is staying the same, we're losing productive people. We're replacing them with less productive people, but other states are growing, and we are going to lose a U.S. congressional seat after the 2020 census. We're on that path. We're only 157 people away now, and I don't see us turning around in the next 2 years.
So you heard the speech last night, as you said, it was kind of that focusing on the good news. We heard a lot of initiatives that the governor is putting forth that have a price tag with it, and we know that we are facing a projected budget deficit this year of $60 million, looking at over $200 million for FY19. Do you think that was just politics focusing on the good side, or are you listening and saying, can we afford this?
You know, I'm okay with a state of the state, whether it's a president or a governor, giving an optimistic. But then you hope that when they go back and they get into the legislative, on another forum or in another, they might acknowledge and work towards the real problems, but they don't. Somehow there's this belief that these tax and spend policies, these giveaways to companies, whether it's training or job credits or whatever it is somehow going to be able to overcome the negative business and taxpayer climate we have in this state, and it's not until I want to give credit to the Speaker of the House. I want to give credit to the Minority Leader Patricia Morgan, who have said we've got to improve the overall business climate for all businesses. Right? The governor talked about the 22 companies they've bribed to come here, and a couple of thousand jobs. Okay. But we're paying for that. It's not sustainable. But you know what? We need hundreds and thousands of new companies, and we need tens of thousands of new jobs if we're going to turn the corner. It's just not big enough. It's just not bold enough, and it's too costly, this corporate welfare strategy she has.
Some of the bold moves that you've advocated for in the past, Mike, zeroing out the sales tax. What's going to be on the agenda for the 2018 General Assembly session?
Well, we one of the reasons I mentioned the speaker is because it was in the newspapers in November. We had Grover Norquist up from Washington, D.C., and we had a meeting with the speaker. The speaker agreed to meet with us just to hear some of his ideas, some of our ideas, and in that meeting, one of the areas we agreed, the sales tax and our school choice push, were the big items we had, but they were never going to happen, right? We might have been a little naive back then in our early years as a center. So we've decided to try to carve out doable, nonpartisan kind of reforms, and reforming regulatory burdens is one of those. And we brought that up with the speaker, and he agreed. And then to hear him actually say that unsolicited during his opening remarks to the General Assembly session this year, and he spent a good minute on it, of only, a 5 or 10 minute speech, was very encouraging. So we think we're gonna see some regulatory reforms. We haven't discussed specific
I was
piece of
gonna
legislation.
ask what the nuts and bolts would be. What would
Yeah.
you like to see for regulatory reform?
So within the next 10 days, our center will put out a report on occupational licensing. We're gonna call it the right to earn, because we believe that every Rhode Islander has the right to earn a living in the occupation that they prefer without having to ask permission from the government, without having to pay fees, without having to jump through training and educational hoops that you have to have so much, of these stupid courses that are often irrelevant in order to work. We don't think that should be the case. So we'll have a report coming out with a list of specific
Okay.
legislative pushes. What we'd like to see, there are some specific things like the hair braider
Yes.
freedom, right?
We saw that last year.
Yeah, right. There's others, there's a new Uber fee imposed at the airport. We'd like to see that go away. And there'll be some other smaller items, but generally, it's big things that need to happen. And some of those big things are a new process for when reforms, regulations can be implemented in the first place, what we call those sunrise provisions. Before any new regulation is put on businesses, it has to go through a rigorous cost-benefit analysis. A clear statement of need, a clear statement of abuse, and then what's the cost-benefit analysis? We don't have that right now. Somebody has a whim, other people have a whim, they pass it without any study.
So who do you think is going to be able to do that? They're going to have to go to the fiscal advisors within each chamber. Who's going to be doing that sort of analysis to say, here's where the numbers are? Because heaven knows we look to the CBO in DC, and there's oftentimes dispute over that. So who would put forth that type of information?
Probably oversight committee. These kind of bills probably should go before oversight committee. So there's a standard process to evaluate them. And that'll be some of the legislation in that sunrise. There's also a sunset provision we'd like to see happen, whereby some of these old crazy rules that are out there that are either outdated or would need to be rethought will go away unless somebody proactively comes back and says, okay, we should re-implement this regulation. Without that, there should be a process where these things just become unenforceable or they go off the books or something like that. So big sunrise and big sunset provisions would be a great help.
Okay, that's a good start. So looking at, again, these regulatory burdens on businesses, is that the focus? Are there any additional legislative items on the agenda?
Well, there are some other items related to regulatory reform. One issue that's very interesting, civil asset forfeiture. Are you familiar with that issue?
From a tertiary standpoint.
Did you know that the government can seize property from people who have committed no crime just on the suspicion of law enforcement or whoever, and often, even if that person ends up found not guilty, they can't get their property back. Could be car, could be cash, could be tools of their trade, supplies in their trade, and Rhode Island ranks, I think, a D- in that area. So again, think about it. So if we have all these crazy regulations that burden businesses, and if somebody's suspected of violating them, they could have their property seized and never get it back, and we don't have good laws on that. So we greatly believe in protection of private property rights, and so we're gonna look to have some specific reforms to amend our civil forfeiture laws in the state.
Very interesting.
It is an interesting topic.
Looking forward to the remainder of the session. You've got some notes here. I've got some additional questions, but it looks like there's some things
We'll
you
go
may
to your
want to hit on.
questions first, yeah.
So what did you think of when you heard the governor put forth $1 billion for the school construction over 10 years? Do you think that's feasible? I mean, we do know the state of the schools, and we've heard some feedback on it. I mean, if that happens, again, are we just looking to see where are their cuts?
Well, let's spend a few minutes talking about that, because this is a very interesting topic. First, do we really have that need? If we're gonna take a 21st century look at education, does it necessarily mean herding kids by the hundreds or thousands into big buildings? There's online, there's homeschooling, there's all kinds of new educational efforts. So do we really want to invest in something when maybe the whole model of education is going to be changing? Well, it is changing. I mean, it is changing. So I haven't even seen yet the justification for why we need to invest in school buildings, why school buildings will be the educational model 5, 10, 15, 20 years from now.
You raise a very interesting point.
It's a very legitimate question, and I would like to see, before we even say we've got to go out and find $1 billion, we got to justify that we even need it in the first place, if that's what we're going to need 5, 10, 20 years from now. Assuming we do need it, you know, it sounds awful familiar, doesn't it? Didn't we kind of hear this argument 2 or 3 years ago about tolls and bridge and road infrastructure, and therefore we need a new toll? So what new toll, what new fee, what new tax does the governor have in store for individuals or businesses? I don't know. I guess we'll find out pretty soon, right, when the budget comes out, I would guess. We also have a couple of solutions to help with that. As you know, I mentioned school choice earlier. Our educational scholarship program, by economist-driven, not our own economists, national economist-driven modeling, would save the state of Rhode Island about $20 million a year, because there would be thousands of kids who would not be educated by the government anymore. They'd be going to private schools with a very small scholarship. The way we had it, no more than 6,000. So every school district in the state saves if they don't have to educate X number of kids. You could use that $20 million a year to probably fund about a $400 million bond, without having to tax anybody more, without having any more, let's put it, using existing educational funding. We could, by implementing school choice the way we've designed it, you could fund a bond to get almost half of that $1 billion in the first place.
I have a question about that. You've been up there
Sure.
fighting that fight for a number of years now. And when you're talking with people, have you found people have come around on the issue as you've kept pushing and pushing, especially hearing from families, or are people really stuck in their ways?
Well, I think we're hearing from parents and students that they want an escape hatch from some of these schools. But as far as up on Smith Hill, no, there's no more openness to that. I mean, the unions see it as fewer teachers, therefore fewer dues, therefore fewer political power. And they would never, go along with it. They'd have to be dragged kicking and screaming to accept it. And there's nobody, I don't think, up there on Smith Hill who's willing to take on the unions right now.
So that's your, responding to the governor's proposal for that $1 billion, saying here's our proposal as to how there could be a funding mechanism without taxation on Rhode Islanders.
How we could fund a large part of it, 40% of it. Now, we also, with the tolls situation and the bridges, well, I should say the bridges, we also recommended, and I think we talked about it right here years ago, that if we're gonna spend that kind of money on capital improvement, why should we continue to pay the highest rates in the country? Why should it cost 20-30% more than it should? We should, instead of contracting with the state, we should use a private sector contractor, give them breaks from prevailing wage laws and other laws that drive up costs through all the union process. If we're gonna spend $1 billion, let's get $1.2 billion worth of building out of it, rather than get 700 million, I should say, out of it. It's just a wasteful process we have right now. We're gonna be throwing money down the drain, and if we're gonna spend that amount of money, let's do it in a much more efficient way.
So we heard some indications last night from the governor what she's looking to put forth in the budget. We're going to hear about the budget tomorrow. While I still have you here, what are you looking specifically to see when this budget's released tomorrow?
Well, again, the increases. We have a problem that our tax burden is too high in individuals and businesses. You try to hide it behind fees and this fee and that, an internet tax or a DMV fee for registration or something like that. But the bottom line is, unless we start rolling back taxes and rolling back regulations, we're going to continue to be a non-hospitable place for families and businesses. And our concept is I'm looking for ways we grow our state's tax base, right? That means more people coming here to increase the amount of people pay regular income tax, more businesses coming here. But right now, we're doing more and more policies seem to drive them away. So we're looking for a reversal of that. Does anybody get it? That the only way we can pay for all the obligations we've made is to grow our tax base, which means we need more people and more businesses here, which means we need policies that will attract them here. And I don't see anybody that really gets that.
So we're going to hear from the governor tomorrow on her budget proposal. You just mentioned that the center is going to be putting forth your legislative agenda package, so to speak. What else can we expect from the center in the coming weeks?
Well, we'll be highlighting. We'll be starting a new feature probably next month called the Progressive Bad Bill of the Week. While we want to promote our free market solutions, we're going to be really exposing the harmful effect of the progressive legislation. And we know there's going to be some doozies. We know single-payer health care is going to come out. So it is one of our missions of this year is to expose the harmful impact of the progressive agenda and let voters know that not, this is a progressive Democrats, if I can be honest about it, and then let you know that when not all Democrats are the same. You've got kind of the Kennedy, moderate Democrats that your parents and grandparents probably supported, and then you've got the Bernie Sanders Democrats who really don't share the same values you and I have. They're not really patriotic. They don't believe in the Constitution. They don't believe in religious freedom. They don't believe in capitalism. They believe that they know best, and they should tell businesses and people how to live their own lives and run their own businesses.
So
those aren't American values.
When do we expect to start seeing this bill of the week?
Progressive bad bill of the week, hopefully by the end of the month would be my hope.
Well, we'll keep an eye on that and everything coming out of the center moving forward. But as someone who responded to the governor's state of the state, wanted to bring you back in here to talk about the state of the state, and I'm sure we'll have you back in soon.
Yeah, we like to talk in full truths, not paralipsises.
Not paralipsises. Mike Stenhouse, thank you for coming in. We'll have you back in soon. We'll let you go around the corner.
Thanks, Kate.
Okay, thanks. Mike Stenhouse with the Rhode Island Center for Freedom and Prosperity put out a statement today on the governor's state of the state last night. Wanted him in studio to talk